So meanwhile, we have our doddering old fool of a president who has somehow pulled defeat from the jaws of victory with the economy, pulled defeat from the jaws of victory with regard to COVID. And now he's pulling defeat from the jaws of victory with regard to foreign policy. So he already did this in Afghanistan. He literally just surrendered Afghanistan to a bunch of 8th century tribal barbarians who stuff women into bags and then stuff them into the basement and starve children and marry off those children for an actual fee. He just gave up a country to those people. And now he is facing down other crises from Russia, from China, from Iran. It's hilarious. He keeps going to Iran. He's like, can we make a deal on a nuclear program? And Iran's like, no, because we don't want to. And Iran's like, but please, and then Iran's like, no, we don't want to. And Israel's like, well, what if we just blow up an Iranian nuclear reactor? How about that? How about that? Joe Biden, man, he's such a joke. The two big foreign policy crises right now, not Iran, Russia and China. According to the Wall Street Journal, 3 potential crises are proceeding in tandem. A potential Russian invasion of Ukraine, continuing Chinese pressure on Taiwan, and the potential collapse of Iran nuclear talks. Any one of these standoffs has the potential to shake the world order and produce wider conflict. Taken together, they signal the U.S. and its allies are at a dangerous moment, perhaps more dangerous than many Americans realize. The challenge for Biden and the Democratic leaders he'll be consulting with this week is to find a way to show firmness on each front without provoking a crisis. Now, Joe Biden is about to hold a Democratic conference. There is one problem, which is that the Democracy Summit is being attended by a bunch of places that are not actual democracies. Jen Psaki was asked about this yesterday, about the human rights record of some of the so-called democracies attending this thing. Didn't go great.
The Democracy Summit that will happen later this week is an opportunity to bring together U.S. officials, civil society leaders, and foreign leaders who represent a diverse array of experiences to talk about strengthening democracy, defending against authoritarianism, fighting corruption, and promoting respect for human rights. Inclusion or an invitation is not a stamp of approval on their approach to democracy, nor is exclusion a stamp of the opposite of that, of disapproval.
They're so strong on human rights, this administration. Man, I think that they've got a handle on all of this. So when it comes to China, China is now building military bases in the Pacific. They're seeking their first military base on Africa's Atlantic coast, according to U.S. intelligence. According to the Wall Street Journal, classified American intelligence reports suggest that China intends to establish its first permanent military presence on the Atlantic Ocean in the tiny Central African country of Equatorial Guinea, according to U.S. officials. The officials declined to describe details of the secret intelligence findings, but they said the reports raised the prospect that Chinese warships would be able to rearm and refit opposite the east coast of the United States, a threat that is setting off alarm bells at the White House and the Pentagon. So hemming in China, that's going really well, particularly after we surrendered in Afghanistan and made clear that we are a complete and utter paper tiger. The great power skirmishing over a country that rarely draws outside attention reflects the rising tensions between Washington and Beijing, according to the Wall Street Journal. The two countries are sparring over the status of Taiwan, China's testing of a hypersonic missile, the origins of COVID-19, and other issues. Worldwide, the United States finds itself maneuvering to try to block China from projecting military power from new overseas bases, from Cambodia to the United Arab Emirates. In Equatorial Guinea, the Chinese likely have an eye on Bata, according to a U.S. official. Bata already has a Chinese-built deep-water commercial port on the Gulf of Guinea. Excellent highways link the city to Gabon and the interior of Central Africa. The most significant threat from China would be a militarily useful naval facility on the Atlantic coast of Africa, said General Stephen Townsend, commander of U.S. Africa Command. By militarily useful, I mean something more than a place they can make port calls and get gas and groceries. I'm talking about a port where they can rearm with munitions and repair naval vessels. So things are going really well with the Chinese. Meanwhile, Jen Psaki and the Biden administration, they are taking the overwhelmingly brutal move of saying they won't send official representatives to the Beijing Olympics. Ooh, I'm sure that Xi Jinping is just quaking in his boots. I mean, after all of the harsh treatment we gave them for unleashing a virus on the world that killed upwards of 5 million people, I'm sure that he's quaking in his boots that we won't be sending an undersecretary of state from Tony Blinken's coffee break room over to Beijing for the Winter Olympics. Probably Xi Jinping is like, oh my God, that's crazy. What are we going to do now? Except for everything we were going to do before. Here was Jen Psaki announcing this massive move.
The Biden administration will not send any diplomatic or official representation to the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics and Paralympic Games, given the PRC's ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity in Xinjiang and other human rights abuses. The athletes on Team USA have our full support. We will be behind them 100% as we cheer them on from home. We will not be contributing to the fanfare of the Games.
Okay, and I'm sure that the China, so basically what we've now achieved by not sending a diplomat to China is to piss off the Chinese without actually doing anything, which seems to be great strategy. That's great. Meanwhile, the Russians are mobilizing almost 200,000 troops along the Ukrainian border, and Vladimir Putin is making demands. According to the Washington Post, reporter Isabel Kursugian and Paul Sohn, with Russian troops massed along the border with Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin is expected to issue President Biden an ultimatum during a video meeting on Tuesday. Guarantee that NATO will never expand into Ukraine, or Russia might soon launch an offensive against its neighbor. The Kremlin has said it wants written guarantees from the United States and allies in NATO that the military alliance will not expand east, both in terms of membership and Western forces. The video call comes during an unprecedented low point in U.S.-Russia relations, especially over Ukraine. Wait, I was told that Hillary Clinton was going to hit the reset button. I was told that Joe Biden was a masterful manipulator of the international scene. By the way, anybody who told you that's an idiot. I mean, it was Barack Obama who famously said, don't underestimate Joe Biden's ability to F things up. It was Robert Gates, former Secretary of Defense under both Obama and under Bush, who said, yeah, this guy has never made a right decision on foreign policy. The White House has threatened Russia with serious consequences. Wow, like sanctions. Ooh, that's obviously, those sanctions, they've done wonders for our anti-Russian position. Those sanctions on particular figures inside the Russian national system, so they just use a bunch of cutouts to move their money. It's obviously really deterred the Russians. Putin plans to outline Russia's proposal to Joe Biden, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Monday. Their talks are expected to be quite long and substantive. I'm sure that is going to be, by quite long and substantive, they mean that Joe Biden is going to fall asleep 10 minutes into the conversation, and then Vladimir Putin is just going to threaten him for a while, and then Joe Biden, his unconscious face is going to slam into the hang-up button on the phone. That's how World War III starts, is with the president slipping into unconsciousness and his hand hitting the nuclear button. That seems like how this is going to work out. Meanwhile, over at the White House, they're trying to struggle for, what do they do here? So a reporter asked the White House, Joe Biden was vice president when Vladimir Putin took over Crimea, and he did a bad job then. So why are we supposed to believe he's going to do a good job now?
You mentioned that Biden was obviously deeply involved with the Ukraine in 2014, and I'm wondering if you could talk about what his takeaways are from that experience, because a lot of the things that he's saying this time, supporting NATO allies on the eastern flank, sanctions, those sound like the same things that you guys tried to do in 2014, and it didn't stop Russia from taking Crimea. So why does he think this will be different?
Well, I think first, our objective at this point, Mara, is, of course, to prevent them from moving forward.
That didn't answer the question. So the reporter's like, yeah, last time you tried this, Putin took Crimea. He's like, right, but he hasn't taken Ukraine yet. And the reporter's like, that's what I'm asking you, actually. No answer from the administration. According to the Washington Post, Biden plans to make clear to Putin what costs the United States and its allies will impose on Russia if an invasion occurs, but also will offer a diplomatic pathway that could address Russian concerns about NATO activities, as well as U.S. and European concerns about Russian activities, the official said, speaking on condition of anonymity. Still, the official suggested a written guarantee from Washington that NATO will not expand to include Ukraine was a non-starter, noting the United States believes every sovereign nation should have the right to make its own decisions about its security. Well, Putin has to know that, right? Putin has to know that the West is not going to give him a written guarantee that NATO will never include Ukraine, which means that he's basically just looking for an excuse to invade Ukraine. Now, this seems like it's not a big deal up until the point where Putin crosses that border with 100,000 troops. At that point, this becomes a very serious situation indeed. Because what exactly is the West prepared to do? We obviously are not prepared to put a trigger force in there that would prompt a wider fight back against the Russians. We've given the Ukrainian military under President Trump, we give them some Javelin missiles, but they have not been rearmed under Biden to any serious extent. Sanctions ain't going to do it. So if you're Vladimir Putin, probably what you do is you just grab another piece of Ukraine. Not the whole thing. Walk into Kiev or something. And then you dare the West to do anything about it. And given what we did over Georgia, given what we did over Crimea, the answer is probably the West does nothing over it. And Vladimir Putin just goes home, notches another win. And the West, once again, just starts taking Russian oil. I mean, there's a famous quote attributed to Stalin that you basically push where there's mush, meaning that wherever the other side is willing to give, that's where you push. Vladimir Putin has yet to discover the hardcore of the West. And it is questionable as to whether there is a hardcore in the West anymore. When we said that there was a mistake for the Biden administration to randomly pull out of Afghanistan because it conveyed weakness, there are consequences to that weakness, and that is the exacerbated chances of a great power conflict, for sure. Meanwhile, CNN's Jeff Zeleny, he points out, and he is correct, there is no appetite for U.S. military intervention in Ukraine. Here's the thing. The less appetite you show for military intervention, the more your enemies are going to dare you to intervene. This is the way that it works. The way deterrence works is the more, right, strength, peace through strength, the Reagan-esque slogan, was designed to mean we will show you that we are willing to go to war so we don't have to. It seems that the new American style is we will show you that we are never willing to go to war, and then war is somehow randomly thrust upon us. Here is CNN's Jeff Zeleny pointing out the obvious here.
There is no appetite here for military intervention. On a briefing earlier with a senior administration official, there was several moments of silence when that question was asked about a military solution to all of this. Does the U.S. have the stomach for that? So, of course, they're not ruling anything out, but they simply do not want to add another thing, which would be, a significantly dangerous thing to the plate of this Biden administration, which is already quite full, quite frankly.
America's enemies are on the move. They're on the move because they sense weakness from this administration, and they are right to sense weakness from this administration. This is a weak administration, a deeply weak administration. I know what you're thinking. It's time to binge some more Ben Shapiro videos. Well, you are right. You should. But first, like and subscribe. Perfect. I'll see you in the next video.